right, everybody, welcome back to the Cabral Concept, episode 3016 here today. A lot of takeaways from the show. If you want to head on over to stephencabral.com/3016, you're welcome to do so for those big takeaways and additional links that I find are helpful for more education around this topic. Today, we're going to be talking about Parkinson's disease. We're going to talk about what it is, who it typically strikes, at what age, but also what we can do about it. So one, we don't get it in the first place, and two, we're able to begin to reverse it if we do see those signs. So let's dive right into it. Big show here today. And of course, all those links will be at one spot. That's episode 3016 at stephencabral.com/podcasts. All right. First and foremost, Parkinson's disease does have a genetic component. However, I want to say that it stops there. So there's a genetic component to everything. There's a genetic component to rheumatoid arthritis. There's a genetic component to diabetes. There's a genetic component to gaining weight or being thinner. There's a genetic component to everything. There really is. And so while I will say, yes, the genetic components are specific genes, LRRK2, PARK7, PINK1, PRKN, and SNCA. They've been more associated, those specific SNPs and genes, with Parkinson's. Just like ApoE genotype 44, you're more prone to getting Alzheimer's. It doesn't mean that you're going to get it. All right. So first and foremost, I didn't have rheumatoid arthritis until 17 years old. I then had rheumatoid arthritis for a few years, from 17 to, let's say, 22 years old. And then after 22 years old, I no longer had rheumatoid arthritis. So I had it, I didn't have it, right? And now I've never gotten it again. All my grandparents had rheumatoid arthritis. My parents had rheumatoid arthritis. I had it, but don't any longer. So keep in mind, it's always in our genes, but those genes don't need to express themselves. So let's now go over to the second reason why Parkinson's disease comes about. And that is because there is exposure to certain pesticides, herbicides, and heavy metals that we know exacerbates the breakdown of the myelin sheath in the nervous system. They degrade the neurotransmitters from the brain connection to the body, and they can lead to a disruption in the neurotransmitter dopamine. So now we know, since dopamine is implicated in Parkinson's disease, that any disruption of the nervous system and exposure to toxins that can begin to degrade the nervous system and the neuron dopamine are going to be detrimental to getting Parkinson's disease. So our job is to always be emptying that rain barrel from environmental toxins and try to get as few, as in hopefully none, heavy metals, pesticides, herbicides into our body. But other things affected as well. Benzenes, flame retardants, any of these man-made chemicals can exacerbate symptoms or cause it in the first place. Now, the next one is, they like to say age. Age is a factor for Parkinson's, yes, but age is a factor for every disease, because that as your body begins to fill up that rain barrel, mine filled up at 17, but usually doesn't fill up till you're into your 40s or 50s, and then you get diagnosed with the disease. So in terms of Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, it's usually 60 plus years old. Now, keep in mind, just like with Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, these things are happening decades in advance. That means 10 to 20 years earlier, our body, unfortunately, is setting the stage for these diseases. The good news is we can catch it early. We can empty that rain barrel. We can begin to heal before these things take place. All right. Men are more likely to get Parkinson's than women. Doesn't mean that women can, but there is more men that are at greater risk. Head trauma, traumatic brain injuries, concussions, etc. may lead to a greater risk, but again, doesn't mean that you're going to get it. And then other factors as well, anything that creates a greater amount of oxidative stress, potentially smoking, and other factors can exacerbate that as well. Okay, what does Parkinson's look like? How does it start to progress so that we can hopefully catch it early? And I'll give you a couple of labs that you can run as well, or diagnostics. So usually it affects the body unilaterally. That means one side of the body is more detrimentally affected than the other. So we might say maybe just the left side is having like a little bit more issues with maybe facial expression, half smile, favoring one side, start to get a little bit of stiffness on one particular side, but not really interfering with daily activities. That's stage one. It's really early, right? Early stages. Mid stages at stage 2, and there's 4 total stages, is the symptoms become a little bit more pronounced and they start to affect what's called bilateral movement, both sides of the body. Not as coordinated, not as balanced, and maybe a little bit more difficult time, just normal tasks. Opening a jar of something in your kitchen, maybe a little bit with writing, picking things up, normal daily activities is a big one. All right, now at stage 3, we start to see more advanced stages here. Motor symptoms, a little bit more limited. Like this is now a little bit more obvious. There could be some tremors, shaking, maybe some more greater balance issues, potentially even a fall. Like the person is starting to become so unbalanced that they're really conscious about the steps that they're taking. And then also the slowing down of movements. The slowing of movements is that brain talking to the nervous system. Things are a little bit slower, but also the individual has become more slow in their movements because they're trying to be more conscious of every single movement that they are taking, especially when walking. In the late stages, individuals may be unable to walk, unable to really verbally communicate as well, unable to show a lot of expression, and they may need a lot of full-time care for normal daily activities, including eating, using the bathroom, getting ready, etc. All right, there are a few other ones that I want to share that I don't want you to be overly worried about, but they can be in addition to the motor-based skills or motor degradation, or even pre-early stages. One is sleep-based disturbances. It's a big one. So if you're dealing with insomnia or daytime sleepiness, doesn't mean that you have Parkinson's, but these can be precursors. Let's work on that. That sleep is so important for so many different reasons. The next one is that if you're having difficulty with short-term memory, recall, now it could just be you're extremely stressed, but again, high levels of cortisol can precede Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's. Mood-based disorders, low mood, depression, let's look at that. Overall autonomic nervous system dysfunction, issues with bladder control, issue with blood pressure, issues with sweating or not sweating, all of those should be looked at. And then changes in your sensory perception, smell, taste, etc. If those start to dissipate, it's worth exploring potential issues. Okay, so now how do we diagnose Parkinson's, right? Like what does that look like? So there's a couple of different scales that specialists will use to diagnose a patient, taking them through what's really a motor unit or motor movement-based assessment. There are scales called the Hoehn and Yahr. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's Hoehn, and Yahr is Yahr. That helps to classify which stage you're at, 1 through 4. The other one is called the Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale, the UPDRS, and it's used to assess and monitor the severity of symptoms. Because remember, in conventional medicine, they're essentially just waiting for you to get worse, and then they diagnose the next stage. We, in integrative health and natural medicine, are not okay with that. Our job is to look at the underlying root causes, the glyphosate, pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, gut-based dysfunction, high levels of omega-6s, all the things that can exacerbate Parkinson's or any disease of the body. Okay, so a couple more diagnostic methods for Parkinson's disease. You can do imaging. So imaging techniques such as an MRI or CT scan. I like MRIs with non-contrast, so it can help with looking at inside the body and brain without needing to use radioactive based dyes. That's basically it. Specific type of scan called the dopamine transporter scan, also called the DAT scan, DAT scan, can show reduced dopamine transport levels in the brain. Basically, they're increasing dopamine. They're looking at the uptake, and if there's not as much uptake, they're saying, okay, there's an issue with the uptake of dopamine, and if there's less uptake of dopamine, well, it can lead to then symptoms of Parkinson's, because remember, Parkinson's is a name given to a disease. All right. So the other one that we always want to talk about is the exclusion of other diseases. Parkinson's can mimic a lot of other issues. Heavy metal overload, that's one. Someone that had a stroke in the past, that's two. Another one is what's called multiple systems atrophy. I just worked with a client, private wellness client with multiple systems atrophy. This is different than Parkinson's. This is looking at, as they say, multiple systems within the body, not just dopamine transport. It's important to look at multiple systems atrophy in a lot of the same light that we're talking about with Parkinson's. However, multiple systems atrophy is the next one to really be looked at if dopaminergic or dopamine related supplements and or pharmaceuticals are not giving you the desired result that you're looking for. It may not actually be Parkinson's in kind at all. All right. So now we basically know what Parkinson's is. We know the four main stages. We know what to look at earlier in life. We know about some of the toxicities that could be the underlying root causes, and to run the environmental toxicity test, to run the starter kit, also now called the vitamin tox test, to run the entire Big Five if you can. Those are all at stevencabral.com/shop. That'll just take you over to Equilife. And that's just our virtual functional medicine practice. I chose /shop because it's an easy word to spell. It takes you right over there. But of course, you can also work with an integrative health practitioner level 2, which I highly recommend. IHP level 2s can work with you one-on-one, and they can be found at integrativehealthpractitioner.org. We have no relation with those practices. These are independent practitioners that we've certified to use functional medicine at-home lab testing and to begin to work the process of finding the underlying root causes. But it's totally separate from anything we do. There's no relationship at all there. No advertising, nothing like that. Okay. So I just want to share that because I want you to be able to get the help that you and your family deserve. And I want there to be basically no strings attached, whatever works for you. All right. So now what can we look at, though, as general-based foundational recommendations for anyone with Parkinson's disease or precursors to it? Now, I have to give you the disclaimer. Can't provide you with any medical advice, medical treatment plans, medical cures, or medical diagnosis. This video is probably already going to be banned and get me another strike on YouTube, but it is what it is. I can't not share my message because I'm going to be kicked off all of these social media platforms. I still need to be able to teach, right? And hopefully they'll never take away my website. And you can always go to my website for the podcast, which comes out daily. That's just stevencabral.com/podcast. The podcast will always be free. There's 3,000 plus you can just search. And we're going to be doing some amazing things with AI in the future that you'll literally be able to ask, and it'll be pulled right from one of the 3,000 podcasts and give you your direct answer. So stay tuned for that. All that's happening in the background. Probably will be a year before it debuts, but you heard it here first. All right. So first and foremost, exercise. Legitimately, exercise, anaerobic helps improve neurological function. And then combining that with the softer side. So basically in martial arts, there's Kempo and there's Taekwondo and there's, the harder martial arts. But then there's the softer martial arts. And that's like Qigong and Tai Chi. We need to balance those. So things like yoga or literally Tai Chi can be fantastic as forms of movement for people with early stage Parkinson's. Late stage, it's going to be difficult to do, but you got to keep that body moving. Even when I work with clients in the past, from an exercise perspective, if they couldn't really walk as well, we used an ergometer, which is basically an exercise bike for the upper body. You use the hands. If you're watching this on video, you can see me kind of moving in an ellipse like I would with my legs, but I'm doing it with my hands instead. So we had them do that, and it was fantastic. All right. The second is diet. Throw out everything you've heard about all these fancy diets and all that. If you are still not following some semblance of a Mediterranean diet, getting 7 to 9 servings of brightly colored fruits and vegetables, that's the place to start. I'm just going to keep it at that. We have to start there. Literally, the Mediterranean diet, which nobody owns, is the most well-studied and most reputable diet out there. You don't need to eat the bread and pastas. People always like to get down on it because of that. Eat everything else. Look at it that way. All right. The next one, omega-3 fatty acids. There is no diet that I've really seen, unless you're eating fish 4 to 5 times a week, and it needs to be low mercury because heavy metals, we'll talk about those in a moment, are a big part of this. So use a simple 2 grams of omega-3 supplements a day. Choose your favorite company. I use daily omega-3 support. It's higher in EPA than DHA. EPA flows better to DHA. You're going to absorb more. It's a better product. Bottom line, it will show on your labs, right? And you can run an inflammation omega-3 test to test your own labs. The next one, curcumin. It works. Turmeric, powerful antioxidant, so it helps with oxidative stress and damage there. But also, it's a natural anti-inflammatory. All right, green tea. Use green tea matcha, organic, ceremonial grade matcha if you can. This could be an excellent one. Helps with detox, neuroprotective, great for the metabolism. Excellent product. So make a little bit of green tea. The next one, coffee. You can still do coffee or green tea. It can be just green tea alone, but you don't have to necessarily shy away from caffeine. Caffeine is sometimes shunned when you have Parkinson's, but having a cup or 2 of coffee per day does not lead to Parkinson's unless you have over-exaggerated cortisol levels, which is why you need to run that stress, mood, and metabolism test, okay? But coffee has some of the highest level of antioxidants that you can get from foods. So it can be neuroprotective. All right, couple more. This is important. Run the minerals and metals test to see if you have heavy metals. If you have mercury, if you have aluminum, cadmium, arsenic, lead, these are corrosive. They oxidize the body. They basically rust it from the inside out. Run a minerals and metals test. If you have high metals, do a heavy metal detox. Again, you can find all of these at stephencabral.com/shop. That's what we use in our practice. You can just look at what we use. You don't even have to get it there. You can use it. You can get it from your favorite practitioner as well. All right. Mindfulness, meditation, a way of slowing down. You can read, you can dance, you can sing, you can go for walks, you can use a sauna. All of those are phenomenal, but you have to be able to control stress and bring down those stress levels. One more. Well, I want to give you a couple more because this is important. Vitamin D. Get it from the sun if you can, but if you're not maintaining a tan, supplement with vitamin D. Not high dosage, but somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 IUs a day. That's about 25 to 125 micrograms a day. Coenzyme Q10. If you start to see yourself progress, CoQ10 can be a phenomenal nutritional supplement for those mitochondria. CBD oil. CBD oil has lots of research around it, those cannabinoids, in terms of being neuroprotective for the nervous system and the brain. Typically 25 to 50 milligrams per day. If you do start to see it progress, you can use an herb called Mucuna pruriens, and this can actually help with the formation and absorption of levodopa, L-dopa, which actually helps and is needed to slow Parkinson's. But again, no medical treatment here. Just sharing that with you, that's been clinically studied. Acupuncture can also be one that is great for the nervous system, calms the sympathetic nervous system, and can help with the neurological function of the body. There are others that I can give you, but basically you're using the daily foundational protocol plus other specific tools like a green tea and something like the Inflammasoothe or curcumin in order to be able to balance healthy levels of inflammation and drive very powerful antioxidants into the body. This is what we do every single day in our practice. It's not simple, right? But it is a plan. And these things do work, and they are validated by science. So I wanted to share that with you. If there's additional questions, leave them in the comments below. This was just part one. I'm happy to do additional shows in the future, but I wanted to do one show where I can get people a lot of this information and they begin to share it with family, friends, relatives, so that this information isn't just stuck with me or in my practice, that we begin to share this with the entire world. So thank you so much for subscribing to the show, sharing it with others. I'll be back tomorrow with a brand new Cabral concept. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.